Yes. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bundleline Elementary School District 75 Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Holly,
Here.
Rose,
Here.
St. Clair, here, Hitzke.
Here.
Gallegos.
Here.
Fingerhut, here, Pelletier.
Here.
The first item on our agenda, as always, is citizens' comments. The Board of Education welcomes citizen input. Citizens are reminded to limit their comments to 3 minutes, and also that matters regarding employees or confidential student matters will not be allowed. And the board typically will not respond to citizen comments. If you're interested in making comments, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, click the raise hand icon. When it is your turn to speak, you will be brought into the live session. So, do we have anyone who wishes to address the board? Good evening. Will you please identify yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Larissa Greenfield.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, hi. I've got 3 kids in District 75. 2 of them have completed their time in District 75. The third one is going to be a 7th grader. And the reason that I'm here tonight participating in your board meeting is because I was made aware recently of some changes being made to the ELA honors curriculum. So I started a conversation, which I believe you guys all received via email. And so my main concern, first of all, was that they were doing away with the honors curriculum, which I guess they're not going to do now. So thank you for that. But in the conversations that I had with multiple staff and other people in the district, I'm concerned about the fact that our district is spending money on a curriculum that I don't know for sure is necessary. And we're spending money on consultants to drive an alignment process, which probably is necessary if we have low reading scores and we've got problems in alignment. As a teacher, though, you don't need to pay consultants to participate in curriculum alignment. I've done that several times in schools I've worked in, and we didn't need a consultant. So I guess one of my concerns is, as a taxpayer, when I hear that the district is spending money unnecessarily, I get concerned. When I hear that what has been historically really, really great is also being changed, I get concerned, because my 7th graders should have the same or very similar experience that my older 2 students had. And it sounds like with the adoption of this new curriculum, we're not going to be able to really have that, because the way that it's being presented to the teachers is that you've got to do it this way. You've got to stay on the same page as your colleague. And I can tell you as a teacher, that really takes a lot of the reward and enjoyment out of teaching. And so I think, like, in the conversations I've had, it seems to me that there's a big disconnect between the information that the District 75 board is receiving and what's actually happening, the mentality, the morale, the feeling of the teachers in the schools. And it doesn't seem like there's a real great way for a teacher to voice their opinion without being afraid of, going against their boss, which I completely understand. So I guess a couple of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention, I have a list here, but I don't know. I use Google Classroom, so hopefully I can figure out how to access, but maybe I'll just try to remember off the top of my head. The school-wide curriculum, a lot of the resources are not accessible, even though they're online. They can't access them. The curriculum is not complete. And so if a teacher is teaching a unit, it may very well be that the unit hasn't been completed by school-wide and they haven't been trained on the unit. There's another curriculum called Benchmarks that has just kind of gotten started and had good feedback by the teachers that has been discontinued. The consultants are not really willing to listen, and I'm not in the meetings, I'm just telling you what I've heard. And so please don't take my word for it, Board of Education, please look into it. That's all I'm here to ask you to do, is to take this, what you're hearing tonight, and look into it. Because you shouldn't just take it because I'm telling you, you should actually figure it out and provide a safe avenue for teachers to come with their concerns. Because it sounds like if you question it, if you make too much noise about it, you're really just kind of messing with your career. And ultimately, the teachers are the ones dealing with this curriculum every day. Oh, another thing, there's not a lot of Spanish or bilingual resources, which I know is a high priority for our district. The benchmark one did have that, I think. I don't know how much time I have left. I don't want to talk too long, but
Wrap it up.
wrap it up. Okay, I implore you as a parent, this honors ELA thing was just fantastic, and it's really sad to me that it's going to get changed. And it's not just about my kids though. It sounds like it was more comprehensive problem than just the honors thing, now that I kind of started talking to people. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of it and, tell you I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? One last chance. If you'd like to address the board, please click the raise hand icon. This is your last opportunity. Okay, we will move on from citizens' comments. Thank you. We will now hear the report of the business office.
First one up will be the donation from the Steam Foundation.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Nikki Eric. I'm the president of the District 75 STEAM Foundation. Thanks for having me here tonight. It gives me a lot of pleasure to give somebody, Kevin. I'm going to give you this.
This Kevin?
Kevin.
Thank you.
Oh, that's Kevin. This is a $20,000 check
Awesome.
from the STEAM Foundation, which came to us from the Medline Foundation. And this is for a multimedia studio that began as an idea maybe a couple, 2 or 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Talking to Mark or Mr. Pilot, sorry,
It's okay.
you can call him Mr. Pilot. As an idea of what to do with some of the space at the library or the media center at Carl Sandburg. If you've been in the school, you've seen behind the reference desk, there's those extra, well, not extra, but those rooms that have the glass pane windows. And we're talking about ways that we can incorporate different STEAM learning that you can use, because as the STEAM Foundation, if you're familiar with our work, we do a lot of support to the robotics programs. We started a Cyber Patriot team that, for a reason that our main coach, his work schedule changed, so that's on hiatus. We give a lot of grants for things like Makey-Makeys and a lot of computer things, and we do sponsor the arts a lot because the A in STEAM is important. We help launch with the choir program and the musical at Sandburg. But a multimedia studio really incorporates a lot of the touch points in STEAM, because you have things like filmmaking and using computers for digital editing and podcasting and streaming, the scoring of the music, the filmmaking classes, and a multimedia studio can encompass all of that when you have the creation with a TV studio, a film studio, an audio recording studio. So you can really give the kids many opportunities to hit all different parts of STEAM learning. And so we talked about this and we saw that this space almost naturally lent itself, because these rooms could be like a control room, which if you've ever been in a recording studio or a TV studio, there's one room where they do the filming or the recording, and then another room where the other people sit that are in control of the knobs and the buttons and such. We thought this could be a great area potentially when they were looking to sort of repurpose the space. So then you know, we started playing around with ideas and fundraising, and then COVID hit, and, you know, we're all like this now. So things changed, and they did a different idea with the space, which is fine. And there's another great area in the school where we can build out that space. And so we talked with Medline Foundation, who loved the idea. We put together a grant, which you saw, I believe. The price tag was more than 20,000, and it's actually increased since I wrote that grant. So there's another grant out there that I'm talking with another potential donor who's very interested in coming up with the rest of the funding. But this 20,000 is a great start. And
Yeah.
Mr. Pilot, and if Dave is here, I mean, okay, yeah, they can answer if you guys have any questions about what the physical space will look like there, but I think the building is going to get started.
Yeah, with the current layout of Sandburg, if you've been at Sandburg lately, what we've done is repurpose the current multimedia center into the robotics room. And the robotics area will be used as the multimedia center. And Mr. Zaremba, along with the Medline people, Nikki Eric from the foundation, along with MHS and Ken Meister, we've put together a program to use the $20,000 to begin the building and incorporate this into our related arts classes. So it'll be not just an after-school program like robotics or the musical or those pieces, but it'll be a vibrant part of our curriculum, which already exists. We're just going to enhance it and take it to the next level. And then some of the after-school pieces, you know, when Mrs. Gupta records on stage at Lincoln, may be able to be done in the recording studio with the cast and crew of the musical, just to add a different flavor to things. So we're excited about this opportunity. You know, we've started the TNN, the Tiger News Network. You've seen me on there over the years of COVID. The kids have been on there. They've done blanking on SPA's special, I can't remember, like commercials on wearing a mask and different PSAs. Thank you. And so we're excited about actually having a studio to work in with the appropriate equipment rather than the kids using the handheld camera, their iPhone on a skateboard going down the hallway. So, which, you know, they're creative and they're great, but we actually are moving towards, you know, the formal process of recording and editing and all of those pieces. So thank you very much.
We want to create like a pipeline into, if you've been at the high school, they have an amazing recording, you know, program there for video production.
Yeah.
So this is a great connection for those kids, sort of a pipeline for them to get into that piece.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really very exciting, and it's going to be used in our STEAM camps too in the summer, because we have a great filmmaking camp that goes on, and we do the Mundance Film Festival. So the kids will really have a great resource now to take their classes.
Yeah, we're excited
Yeah,
that Mr. Zaremba's already started the construction and the process, so we'll be up and running in the fall.
yeah, and one
So
last thing
thank
is that Medline is very excited to partner with the district, and they want to stay involved throughout the entire process, even beyond the building of the studio. They want to send their employees in to act as mentors,
Yes.
even with other programs that the STEAM Foundation is working on. They want to speak in Mr. Longley's class because they have people who are digital literacy employees or experts or whatever we want to call them, and they're happy to come in and speak to the kids about a career or mentor these kids. So they want to form a lasting connection and stay a vital part of you know our program. So that's a great thing too. So I think that they could be sort of recurring donors potentially and more like partners as opposed to a one-time, you know, one-off.
Medline came through and walked the facility, had a chance to meet Mr. Longley, talk with them about the programming, and they were very excited to bring in other staff from Medline to talk about in the career ed class about just different aspects within Medline's production and all the different pieces. So it's kind of extended beyond just the grant to bring in the studio. So we're excited.
I'm really excited to hear you say that, Mr. Meister's involved. That's an awesome connection between our district and the high school. That's fantastic. Nikki, let me just say on behalf of the board and ultimately on behalf of our students, thank you very much for all your work behind the scenes.
that I can come back with another check of this size, so we can keep this going. So it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks.
Next is our boiler replacement bid.
Good evening, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is David Zaremba. I am the Director of Facilities and Grounds from Mundelein School District 75. I am coming in front of you today to discuss a boiler replacement at Carl Sandburg and Lincoln School. On May 17th, we had about 15 bidders come in to submit bids for this boiler project. After going over the bids and checking references, the lowest bidder via this board policy was $451,900, which was around $5,100 cheaper than the next bid. I am asking the board today to please approve this contract so we could order the material, get it on order because there is a backlog because of steel shortages right now. So we could get this project done by 10/15. Are there any questions?
Okay, I feel like a number of years ago, we replaced a boiler at Sandburg, or did we rebuild one? Did you rebuild one time or
That was
something?
at Lincoln. It was that's why we're only replacing one at Lincoln.
Okay.
We're putting a hybrid system now in at Lincoln. We built one last year. We got it cheap, so we put it together. Also, it was a learning curve for my guys, so I could teach them a little about combustion and stuff like that with the boiler system. So yes, we did.
I knew it would happen. I just didn't remember.
Yeah, that's why there's only one there and there's gonna be two at Lincoln, at Carl Sandburg.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Dave? All right.
I think the
Thanks.
sooner you get it ordered, the better.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is student services report. First, the very long report about federal grant application and that whole process.
Good evening, everyone. So yes, each year annually, this is our third year of Illinois State Board of Education facilitating the consolidated district plan process, which is where we give an overview or complete the comprehensive overview of what we hope to utilize our federal grant monies for. And then the next step after the comprehensive district plan is reviewed by the school board and approved is that we can submit that. And then from there, we can work toward our more specific grants. So that includes our Title I grant, Title II, Title III, which is our immigrant and limited English proficient, it's in two parts. And then our IDEA grant, which is basically it's our special education grant funding, which we have separated out in our preschool and our K through 8. So what you received is essentially more of an overview document of the types of components we want to address within our school system when we utilize the grant funding that we receive. So are there any questions about? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Fremont Transportation.
Oh, Fremont Transportation. Sorry, I wasn't able to get Fremont Transportation. So our preschool has been fortunate enough in my whole time here and in a couple years previous as well, to partner with Fremont School District for their transportation. As you may be aware, they have in-house transportation. And so what's really unique about this partnership is, first of all, it's great because we're in that Lincoln school, which is the tri-district school. So we have students from Fremont District that attend as well as Hawthorne District. But also when students turn 3 is when they become eligible for preschool. So it could be at any point during the school year. And sometimes in working with transportation and coordinating all those different routes and adding students, it can be cumbersome. What's great about our unique partnership with Fremont is we've had very much it has been done with ease. Anytime we have a student turning 3 who is appropriate for the preschool, we need to add them. It's been a seamless process. So just asking for you to approve that partnership as well, and then that is covered. We do facilitate that through our grant funding. So thank you so much.
Great question, whoever asked, is this new or we've been doing this for a while? That was fantastic because after I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, the newer board members wouldn't have any idea. It's, like Jamie said, it's worked out fantastic for the district, I think. Next up is the human resources report. First is the approval of job descriptions.
Good evening. So I have two job descriptions for your review and approval tonight. The first is a shared service position, the Director of Public Relations. This opportunity is coming to us because we are combining two part-time positions to create one full-time position. The cost distribution between the districts would be 57% would be paid by District 120, 43% would be paid by District 75. This money T has previously budgeted, so the hiring of this role would be cost neutral. The second job description is a rewrite of a 2014 job description. This is for the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. The logic behind the rewrite of this job description is to try to streamline the language so that it's clear and not as redundant from the previous one, while maintaining an emphasis on the need for data-driven decision-making, as well as strongly emphasizing the collaborative nature of this role and working with teachers and other staff. We've changed the format of the job descriptions for both shared services and District 75 and District 120 job descriptions so that they complement one another. They aren't always the same, but one reason why this job description is coming to you now rather than previously is you'll see that this position identifies what roles that they would supervise. So we are adding that to job descriptions now, and we needed to determine based on staff movement what those positions would be. Additionally, when appropriate, we try to use common language to align the duties and the job descriptions for roles at 120 and 75 when the duties are similar. It makes it easier for the supervisor then to conduct a performance appraisal if they're looking at it through parallel lenses.
Any questions for Shane?
So this is the role that we've already filled and she's starting soon, correct? Okay, just for clarification, it's not a new position that we're adding on.
No, that's.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Next up is the superintendent's report. And the first item is the literacy update.
So I'm gonna go ahead, I'll introduce for this evening. We're going to go through the third part of the series, going through our literacy update from this past year. We're very excited to be able to have this presentation for you this evening. One of the last board meetings, what you'd asked for was the update on our scope and sequencing and our glossary of terms. If all of you remember back when we first started this journey, we learned that we didn't have a scope and sequence for our ELA, which meant we didn't have the standards aligned for what we wanted to do going from grade level to grade level. So that it was a roadmap for us. And that was a huge undertaking. That is something that just a single person can't do. We are very fortunate in that we were able to have Pat Pollock, an author in literacy, and Dr. Dale Trudy be willing to participate with us and join with us on this endeavor. Through this process, I think they've done a very good job communicating how they've met pretty much weekly with different teams at each of the buildings in implementing the literacy program that we wanted to do. And it's a workshop model. The notion that we redid curriculum is simply not accurate, and that wasn't their focus. They wanted to come in and be able to help them supplement what we were doing with more materials and convey a teaching model that was going to be consistent and working that through the scope and sequence chart. And I'm really happy to be able to say we're here tonight, being able to show you this is where we're at. And we are going to be ready come August when our students walk through that door. Because all of us have said it's not acceptable where we are right now for our students reading at grade level, and we're going to make it where our students are at grade level. We have phenomenal staff that are behind this, and they want to see this work because the amount of support they see happening is something that they can get behind. So with that, I'll hand it off to Pat Pollock and Dr. Trudy.
Thank you, Kevin. Dale, we can't hear you. I just want you to know that when I'm in a meeting, that at least happens once. So I apologize and I'll start over. We're really very honored to give this presentation, the third for the 2020-2021 school year. And for those of you who are new to the board, this is your first presentation that you will hear from us, but hopefully we will give you enough information, and hopefully what we sent you in the board packet was helpful to you in terms of what we have done this year. So I just want to give you an overview of what we plan to discuss this year. Next slide, please. I want to spend some time talking about the efficacy of professional development, really professional learning. We're going to talk about the goals for the year, our reflections on our accomplishments, looking forward with professional updates regarding OG, Orton Gillingham Literacy and Administrators, our exciting professional learning that's going to happen this summer, which is a different model that has been used previously. An artifact review process that we're using, samples of scope and sequence, the ELA glossary, which we promised to you, and the literacy handbook, which will be a tool to support consistency with practices and something that teachers can bring to all of their team meetings. So one of the most important things that a superintendent can provide to its staff and to the administrators is strong professional learning. It has to be ongoing, it has to be deep, and it always has to focus on how are we going to make things better for kids. Consultants don't stay forever. One of our jobs is to build internal capacity. And when I look at your leadership team for next year, I am confident that the transfer from working in partnership with consultants to working with all of your leaders in the district will definitely happen by the end of year 3 of our process. We continue to set goals for ourselves, for our students, and we always keep in mind, what will this mean for a student? How will what we're doing support intentional growth for all learners? We are cultivating an environment conducive to a growth mindset and student-focused instruction. It's about helping the kids. It's about staff providing whatever needs to be provided to make sure all kids are successful. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about our accomplishments, and Pat and I are kind of going to go back and forth. But I have to tell you that my smile gets bigger, my voice gets louder when I talk about what we've done in terms of Orton Gillingham. Orton Gillingham is a program, and it is a program that supports kids learning how to read. Because there was no such program in the district, a consistent program, we found that in your testing scores, kids weren't showing the growth they should be doing because there wasn't that consistency. With the effort of the leadership team and the administrators, we had over 60 people, over 60 professionals trained in Orton Gillingham. And this summer, we are partnering with Wakanda and have another large group of teachers and administrators learning how to implement OG in the classroom for whole class instruction and for small groups. By the end of this summer, 95% of all classroom teachers and specialists, meaning reading teachers, special ed teachers, et cetera, will be trained in how to teach children how to decode while providing them with rich literacy. Pat, your turn.
Something else that creates a wide smile for both Dal and myself are the classroom libraries. And last summer, we started a process by inviting the teachers to reflect and audit what they had in their classrooms. COVID came along, and so all of our dreams about how these classroom libraries would be used by students was impacted. But the one thing that we learned is that we were rich in some areas and light in others. And so it was a really wonderful collaborative experience where teachers could celebrate what they had, but then look at the possibilities of what they can continue to add. And when we started this process, we depicted it as a 3-year journey in which teachers would be able to continuously add according to contemporary literature, the new changes that we want to abide by with the C3 standards, and also ensuring that the books that we have are culturally and historically relevant. And so we've continued on that journey. And the outcome of that will be this year, we will get to hear children from age 5 all the way through 8th grade be able to speak about themselves as readers, as thoughtful readers, using genre language that we had not heard before. And that's part of the instructional model that Kevin mentioned earlier. When he said we were making a commitment to workshop, many of these things on this list will enhance that workshop model. And one of them being, in absence of a robust, rich classroom library, it would be very difficult to have engaged, thoughtful readers. And so that's why this bullet is so celebratory for us, because when you have an opportunity to put a variety of rich literature examples in the hands of children, there is a healthy buzz in each and every classroom. And students have an extra hop in their step because they're being exposed to a lot of different types of books that they didn't even know existed. I can go on and on about books, but I'll stop right there.
We'll give each other a signal when
Yes.
it's time to move on
Like
to the
this.
next one.
Yep.
So on a personal note, I had a personal and professional joy of meeting with each middle school team almost weekly to talk about workshop, to talk about directions in which we're going, and to talk about kids. We had meetings discussing materials. Everybody listened to one another in terms of what's working for kids, what's not, where can we make changes. So the partnership that existed with Mark Pilot, Erica Denman, the consultant, and the teachers was really a model that could benefit many districts. We also had monthly administrative support as well as updates. So Pat, Erica, and I would have the opportunity to share a strategy that we're using with teachers so that the administrators can support them, and then keeping them updated. It was rare that there was a week that went by that one of us was not meeting with an administrator on a one-to-one, just updating them what was going on besides these administrative meetings.
The next thing on the list is also going to be coming up in a later slide with an update as frequent as earlier today, but we started a process called the Artifact Review Team. We were very interested in not only collecting different artifacts and analyzing data, but also having conversations about instructional practices. The nice thing when you introduce something like this to a school district and to educators is that you kind of remove the fear that sometimes you might have about, oh, I'm coming in, and it's very revealing and it makes you feel vulnerable. But we created a really safe space by having an early implementation team and practicing and refining some of the protocols that we want to have present, because next year all teachers will be participating in this in all 3 buildings. And I will be able to elaborate on that a little bit more in a future slide. The next thing that we're really proud of is an instructional model called the interactive read aloud. And I think that many of us enjoy reading aloud to students. The word interactive is incredibly important, just as the word intentionality. And one of the things that we focused on as a consulting team in collaboration with feedback from the teachers, because they really did want to learn how to think aloud across the text so that they were providing sound models for students, is that they saw their instructions seep into the schema of students. And all of a sudden, as teachers were being planful educators and practitioners, everything that they did to plan these interactive read alouds enabled students to discuss books, lift the level of their thinking and talk, and then write about books. And that's the power and beauty of taking a read aloud and making it interactive. It's literally when teachers think aloud across the text, they transfer their thinking to students so that they're thinking aloud across the text. They're inspiring students to talk about books and write about books and try something out that they've never tried before. And so that model, which lives or is nestled into workshop, is one of the most important gifts that we can give to our students.
Pat, you can do the next one and then I'll go on.
Okay, so we have had a lot of different partnerships, and this is something that for me personally and my colleagues is a rarity. And because Mundelein has partnered with really, really smart consultants, we were able to work together. Just this morning, I was on the phone with the consultant who works with the dual language teachers. And so when we were creating our curriculum maps, her name is Amy Mascara, we were partnered together. We'd never met. And we literally every 2 weeks met together to go over the scope and sequences and the feedback we received from teachers. And then we co-presented to each individual school building when it was time to talk about the difference between a scope and sequence, a resource, and a curriculum map, because at that point in time, there was some confusion between those three things. Then I had the opportunity to partner with the consultant from Orton Gillingham, and I asked her also to take a look at the ELA glossary, because it was not only important for us, the consultants for Schoolwide, to create all of these working definitions of important key concepts and terms, it was also to be important to be consistent through the lens of foundational skills and the lens of multilingual learners. And so this collaboration amongst three distinct organizations from 3 different states, by the way, has really worked out well. And I personally am so appreciative to be able to have that open discourse with these very, very intelligent, collaborative consultants.
So I want to talk a little bit about the K-8 scope and sequence completion and curriculum maps. Districts all over the country sometimes confuse resources with a K-8 scope and sequence. They buy a book, a basal reader, they used to be called. Some of you on the board may remember that name. And they would start on page 1 and they would finish. And when you would ask what the scope and sequence was, they say, we follow this particular textbook series. We're very lucky that we have the Common Core standards in ELA and math, and they help identify for us what skills, habits, and attitudes our children need to accomplish at the end of the year. In order to have equity in a district, you can no longer have what teachers used to be called, which were independent contractors. People went into their rooms, they closed their door, they were experts, they were passionate about what they did, and they presented what was right for kids. So you could have one experience in one room and one in another. The scope and sequence also provides an opportunity for professional learning conversations between teachers, with administrators, and as Pat referred to, going back to student work and looking at it. When you use a readers and writers workshop model, you are able to take every child from where they are and move them forward, because we know where they're going next with our scope and sequence. Pat, you want to talk about the evidence-based resources?
Yes. So one of the nice things that happened this year is we were able to elicit feedback from teachers about the current resources they were using. We had over an 87% rate of return with these surveys, which is really unheard of in school settings. Generally, that percentage is lower. So that was really, really helpful to us because we wanted to get that feedback. And that feedback led us to looking at the resources that were currently being used and putting them into categories. And one category is standards aligned, evidence-based resources that we could comfortably say to anyone, this is going to help to develop thoughtful readers and writers and researchers. And if we kept on going, historians, scientists, artists, athletes, we really wanted that to consider the whole child, but make sure in the spirit of equity that we were providing them with differentiated and responsive resources that were also evidence-based and would support their development through the lens of literacy. We also, on this survey and in conversation, were able to identify resources that weren't evidence-based or didn't reflect the standards, or in some cases were just kind of random selected things found on the internet, which I know how that happens. As a former principal, I saw it happen. And teachers are really just trying to do the right thing by students. And so, especially during this past year, during COVID, finding things while you're at home was something that everyone was trying to do in the spirit of being a supportive educator. But it was our responsibility to use the publisher's criteria when selecting interactive read alouds and to also mine resources that were evidence-based, standards aligned, and would engage all students in a way that we could be responsive and also just nurture a love of reading and writing so that all students would walk away feeling that indeed inside of them there was a reader and a writer.
And then we started the process, as Kevin alluded to, of developing an ELA glossary and a reference guide. And you had access to those and were able to open them in your board packet. This is an ongoing process. We will make sure that every group, dual language, reading specialists, special ed specialists will all have had a chance to preview and review the glossary and reference guide to make their suggestions. And this is an ongoing process, and it was truly a labor of love.
So during the spring, one of the things that we learned as a leadership team in tandem with the consultants who joined this leadership team is that we had to refine our executive functioning. And I thought this was very important to include in this report, that over time, we learned that we needed to be more organized. And so while we had these bi-weekly meetings, it wasn't until, I'm going to say March, that it occurred to me, and the reason why you see these colors up here is that we had to separate everything out and delineate exact due dates and put ourselves on some sort of schedule so that everyone had clarity with dates, clarity with completion, and clarity with next steps. And so I just took one example that was a derivative of one of our administrative meetings. There's a hyperlink on top. This is a new edition from last night, and you'll be able to open up just an example of how we were able to problem solve during a leadership team meeting, create some due dates and assignments, and make sure that everyone walked away with clarity. Next slide, please.
So this is looking ahead, and ahead just means 2 weeks from now for a lot of the work we're doing. I shared with you before that the Orton Gillingham training is going on. Teachers will receive support throughout the year from our OG consultants, and they have been accessible all year. People email them, call them. They were available on Fridays, providing whatever type of support teachers or administrators needed. And the next thing is a new project that we started to let teachers who wanted to have opportunities to learn more over the summer to be able to do so. And I'll let Pat address exactly what that looks like.
So later on in the presentation, there's a hyperlink so that you can glance at the catalog. But what we really try to do, and what we're always trying to do, is to make sure that we're providing professional learning opportunities for teachers that focus on best practices. It's never been my personal belief, Dale's personal belief, my colleagues' belief that you start with best practices of a resource. In order to use any resource, you have to build a foundation. And so we designed a catalog of courses that would help to support teachers in the instructional models that live inside workshop teaching, as well as the tools that students would be using. And so there are courses on building reading and writing muscles using the notebooks. There are courses on what it means to read like a writer instead of reading like a reader, how to lift the level of talk. This was very intentional. My colleagues and I also used the results of the survey. And when the teachers were posed with the question, what is it that you would like to learn more about? We took that list and we designed some courses in response to the results of that survey. In addition to the asynchronous learning that's happening in July, we're also repeating some of the courses in August, and we will be there live. And so teachers have multiple opportunities to hone their craft and enhance their professional learning by attending these courses. And it was almost like when you sign up for college, you think about yourself as a learner, you think about what's going to help you in your personal teaching. Some of the courses were flagged as required because we knew that it was a practice that needed to be consistent for students in particular grade levels. But then there were also some choice courses that teachers can sign up for. And I think it's going to be a really nice professional learning community experience for both the asynchronous experiences and the live experiences.
And if you go down just a little further to one of the bullets that talks about professional books purchased, everybody who signed up for a course was given a book that's related to their course, so that when they have conversations with other people who took the course or just other people in their buildings or on their teams, they will be able to share the resource, bring it to meetings and have discussions. So the next thing I want to talk about is curriculum writing across the summer, and what does that look like? We had multiple meetings with every single team going through what makes the most sense in terms of our scope and sequence. What kind of learning do you need to go through? What resources are we going to use? And these discussions went across weeks. And then we told them that the leadership team and the consultants would be taking all their feedback and tweaking existing units and creating new units. And we would only do that through November, because people will then have had an opportunity to look at their resources and decide, you know, this worked well, I want to tweak this as we go into our next unit. So we'll be very nimble and able to, when we write the units and provide professional learning with the teachers, because we all partnered in this.
And just to kind of echo Dale's sentiments, one of the nice things about resource procurement is that our message to teachers, which is also a rarity, is that they were going to be encouraged to select a variety of resources. There are some districts, as a former administrator, sometimes you're just asked to select one. But what we wanted was to look at the standards, to think about the students in Mundelein, to think about the workshop model, and then select the very best resources that we could that were also evidence-based. In some cases, we held on to the current resource. And so Benchmark, in many of the grade levels, some of those units are still going to be continued. For those of you who just want from an information perspective, we are drawing resources from Heinemann, from Benchmark, from Schoolwide, from commonlit.org, some professional resources from Corwin, Stenhouse, and Heinemann, and then classroom libraries from Schoolwide and Lee and Low. And so just for clarity's sake, I did want to reinforce that we're not doing away with, but we did have to analyze the standards and the units that appeared in the current resource, and some of them because of the feedback that we received from teachers, and also because of aligning it to the standards, we were able to hold on to some of those units.
And then we are working this summer to do scheduling of cohesive literacy blocks. They'll look very different in the 3 different buildings. The consistency with our instructional model. What does reading and workshop look like, sound like, and feel like at different developmental stages? We're going to have consistency with genre and text type instruction. And Pat, if you just want to spend about 15 seconds talking about the difference between genre and text type.
Sure. So the way the standards are organized is there's a lot of acronyms, but in reading standards, we talk about genre. And so the language that we'll be using with students when we unpack genre is genre, subgenre, author's purpose, structures, features, comprehension tools, writing about reading, and vocabulary. When we talk about text type, the standards for writing are organized by text type and form. And there are 3 big ideas: narrative writing, informational explanatory, and opinion argument. And the beauty of that is underneath each text type, because we have so many contemporary creative writers right now, the kids are going to be exposed to graphic novels and different forms of poetry and feature articles. But when we write this curriculum, our goal is for apples and apples. We want students to embrace, if I'm reading a nonfiction book, that's really going to help me to produce an informational piece of writing. I exceeded my seconds, but that's really the outcome of not only teaching children about genre and text type, but aligning them and having them make sense.
We are very excited to continue our professional learning work with Sarah Cacciatore, your new assistant superintendent, and with your teaching and learning coordinators. Sarah has a deep passion for literacy and a deep understanding of a workshop model, and will be able to lead these efforts with her teaching and learning coordinators in a very, very positive manner. So we're really excited about that partnership. And Pat is now talk about artifacts, and then because you have samples of the other things, we'll go much more quickly through the last part.
Yes. So we started a process called the Artifact Review Team, where we had 3 early implementers. There are hyperlinks. I wanted you to see some examples of one of the schools. So Washington shared their slides with us. And so you'll be able to see the 4 meetings that took place where first we all practiced analyzing a piece of writing, which is that one right there, A Day at the Beach. And we also practiced protocols, how we were going to run this meeting, stems that we were going to use when we were providing feedback. We used the phrases glows and grows. We used some of the work of Frank Serafini, who organizes different forms of assessment through the lens of artifacts, observational data, AKA kid watching, and interactions, like when you're conferring or sitting side by side with students. And really our purpose, as we said earlier, was to identify needs and gaps, but also celebrations. We wanted to be able to highlight what was currently going well. We also wanted to track trends. Sometimes when you do this work, you'll notice that something like writing about reading is staying at a literal level. And so that would inform us that we needed to build in some more instructional opportunities to lift that level. We aligned everything to having conversations about instruction. So it wasn't just about the things that were being brought to the meeting, but it was, how did that artifact get produced? What model of instruction? Was it small group? Was it whole group? Did the teacher give a lot of input, or was this done completely independently? and the child just produced that on their own. And then we really did hold kind of mock fishbowl experiences where we can learn from each other, because these early implementer groups are going to be change agents and public relations facilitators, because they'll be talking with their colleagues about the experience as we start this next year. If we go to the next slide, you can see some examples that were used at Washington School. They were studying pieces of writing. It was a narrative experience for students. But I already know, as I'm looking at the student writing, that there are certain mentor authors that these children emulated from because of the techniques that I see. And whenever that happens, it's definitely an affirmation that kids are active participants in the instruction and that they're applying a lot of what's being modeled by teachers. You will have access to a calendar, and I don't know if you want to see it right now. If we have time, someone will let me know.
Pat, if you could just put it up on the screen for a minute, and
Okay.
then you can just give them an idea.
It's go back a slide. I'm sorry, Anna. And so you see the hyperlink that says 2021, 2022 calendar.
Our version doesn't have that link.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
What I wanted to say is we had, we'll make sure that that opens for you. We had a 2-hour meeting with principals and building leadership today, just talking about the artifact review process, going over the calendar and having really strong discussions. And I have to tell you that one of the coordinators, I think it was Cindy Cementa, I hope I'm not just pointing you out, Cindy, talked about the fact that for a few years, you've been looking at different models and different ways that you could look at student work, and your feedback in terms of why this was working and how it was working was very valuable to the whole team. So thank you.
I think the words that were used is this is the first time that we were really focusing on instructional practices in a very, very meaningful way. And I so appreciated that comment, because that means it's working. It means that we'll not only be able to enhance the experiences of students, but also the teachers are reflective practitioners. Okay, we'll keep moving along.
Next slide, please.
Next slide. And the next one. So the links on my end are working, but I don't have control over them. But what you're seeing on here, and I want to be able to reference this, is the combination of efforts. And so down here is a dual language link that shows you in a color-coded way how a dual scope and sequence is built. Now, because the needs of the students in a dual language program are slightly different, and the way that they access literacy is first through content, that's the rationale for the color coding, because these reflect the science and social studies lens that will be used to reinforce literacy. You're also going to see at a very simple level, this is just a screenshot, but then you'll see the whole thing, the beginnings of the conversations that we had with teachers. Our initial conversations had nothing here in the resource columns. All we did was look at the standards, look at the surveys, think about our students and the gaps, and create a possible journey. And then what we did is start to have conversations about resources. And so you'll even notice in this one right here, we decided that this launch experience and the next fictional experience in first grade would be using some of the things from Benchmark alongside some of the things from Schoolwide. Finally, this link is showing you a completed version of the launch unit for kindergarten, how it moved from a scope and sequence, which is on the top of the document, to a curriculum map inclusive of the social and emotional learning standards, academic vocabulary, formative and summative assessments, mentor texts, and opportunities for differentiation. Sorry, Dale.
No, but that's perfect. And then you'll all have those links which you can open. If we, this was really a joint effort led by our principals, our leadership team. Our teachers were an integral part at every single grade level. And it was really wonderful to be able to observe. Next slide, please. So do these links open?
I'm so sad.
Okay, so we have a glossary that has been worked on since the day we all started working together. There is a link that has this amazing catalog that looks like a small college catalog. And then we have a document that we all laugh about that started as a 77-page document in last September, and that we've worked through this to identify the literacy of best practices pre-K through 8, so that all children, all families, all staff, all administrators are talking the same language. Pat, you want to add anything to that?
No, just that all three of these documents reflect a labor of love by a lot of people. And I think that through the leadership team, through Kevin's leadership, through the collaboration of many different consultants and Dale, we were able to create things that are really going to bring us not only on a path, but take us on this wonderful journey forward, so that there's a spirit of collaboration and consistency, and all of our eyes are on the same prizes. And those prizes would be the students in your school district. I was lucky enough to be there before COVID, and my last day there was right when the world closed down on the 13th of March. And I am so eager to come back and roll my sleeves up and work and collaborate with all the many special people that make up your school district.
Thank you, Pat. And Anna, I think if you open the link to the catalog in the middle, we can start there. We can just try to see if it opens for the board.
No,
No? Okay.
I think it's because it's saved differently as a PDF. Yeah.
So before our next slide, Anna. Thank you. Before we go to our question slide, I just want to share a small story about a conversation I had with Kevin. So when we talked about what might this literacy initiative look like in the district, we really had a very deep conversation about how professional learning is done in various places across the country. And one of the things that usually happens in districts, and Pat and I both probably have all the states covered between the two of us and work that we have done, it's usually a one and done or a 2 or 3 and done, which means people select a resource in a district. They have representatives from the publishing company come out and give a presentation, and it's usually 3 hours to 6 hours. And then the district believes that the teachers are ready to go. And when Kevin and I had a discussion about professional learning, we were on the same page. 1 year is not enough. 2 years is not enough. 3 years is the time when transition can take place and you've built enough capacity in the district that the teachers, the administrators, and the kids all own it. And we are open for questions.
Can I ask first, can we get a copy of that updated
I was gonna
draft?
say,
Because
our version doesn't have.
4 links that were referenced up
Yeah.
there were not in our materials. So I could get my links to work to the ones that were there, but
Okay.
and that would have been helpful to see. So
Sure.
Sure.
we get followed up and trying to understand. I'm not an educator and I'm not a teacher, so I'm trying to learn, about this, just to try to understand better. So when you say that there's resources that were provided, as part of the maps and doing that,
Mhm.
that those are like examples of things they can use, or are they limited to using that list of resources based on these maps?
Okay, so what we did is once we decided what genre and what text types would be selected in which order, we gave choices to the teams of various resources that we had vetted that would really support a readers and writers workshop model. So to give people 10 resources when you know that 7 of them really don't meet the criteria of rigorous, authentic materials, in most cases, we provided 3 to 5 resources for teachers to really dig in to deeply and have discussions. Why would this one really be appropriate for this particular genre unit? Why would this resource be a valuable one to use? So there was total input, and people came back after teams discussed and said, we looked at this and we thought about this resource, but you know what, we're going to go with this one, and these are the whys behind it. This process went on for numerous sessions with various teams.
Can you extend your discussion on this topic and relate it to your comments around opportunities for differentiation?
Sure. Pat, you want to start? I'll follow. It doesn't matter.
So what's really nice about the workshop model is that you move from whole group to small group to partnerships to independence. And so through the lens of differentiation, you might be using an instructional model that works better for students in a strategy group or a small group. You might be sitting side by side with the student during a conference to engage them in articulating the process that they're using to unpack texts. So differentiation sometimes comes through the use of resources. Sometimes it comes through the use of the instructional model. And other times it's the process in which you're employing with the student to help meet their needs, whether that be for enrichment or remediation.
The other thing is, we talked a lot in sessions 1 and 2 about student voice and choice and agency. We also talked about the fact that a readers and writers workshop allows for responsive teaching depending upon the needs of kids. And it also is a gradual release of responsibility from the teachers to the students. So independent reading is a large part of what goes on in a workshop. And Pat, if you just take a minute to describe where that is in the process and how it meets the needs of all children, no matter where they are on the continuum, to successfully meet the standards.
So we're using a lot of terminology like gradual release and workshop teaching, but our goal is to be able to arm students with a toolbox so that when they get to independent reading, they can feel comfortable, confident, and engaged. And usually this happens through modeling in a whole group lesson, through guided practice or extra practice through small group work, through conversational feedback through a conference, and then the best moment and the most amount of time, hopefully, will be spent where students are engaged in texts. And so some of the things that happen during independent reading is that students are armed with a book baggie or a book box and have choice in the text that they're reading. And typically the first book that they're reading is applicable to the lesson that just was conducted, but then they also have that joyous moment where they get to reach in and engage with a book so that they feel like a reader. If we talk about that in regards to writing, it's the very same thing. We want students to be armed with a lot of models, a lot of guided practice, a lot of environmental support. So when they go off as independent writers, they feel like they're equipped with the toolbox, and we won't hear words like, in either case, how many pages do I have to read before I'm done? Or how many sentences do I have to write before I'm done? Workshop actually removes those sentences from children's language because they're really engaged and engrossed in books and in writing.
But I think the other important point is when kids are reading independently, they are applying the skills that they have been taught by the teacher in the classroom to their reading. And that's a real sign that kids understand what they're reading when they can apply those skills and habits and attitudes and find them in the books that they're reading.
So are the understanding that the workshop and reading and writing workshop process being, like you're saying, taught and giving a toolbox to kids from the early ages and moving up? How does that differ in the, like, say, the middle school level, where there are honors classes as opposed to, you know, grades 3, 4, 5, where there may not be? How does on these in this model of practice?
So one of the beauties of a workshop model is kids at all reading levels and writing levels benefit from this, because there is no ceiling for as far as kids can go. So for example, there are reading and writing standards that we've aligned all of our work to. If a child has met a standard, and we're not talking about where they get, do you remember like SRA kits when probably you were in school, where you were reading a card that was on a red level and someone else was reading a card on the green level? I can't see any heads, so I don't know if.
Olive, I remember.
Okay, so it doesn't work like that. We look at those standards and we take kids from where they are and move them forward. That doesn't happen when you're doing, now this is not like a black and white statement. It doesn't happen when a teacher is teaching one whole novel to an entire class. It happens when teachers take portions of a book that have a particular purpose and focus to them and teach them a skill or strategy that they can apply to a resource that, one, has their interest level, two, meets their cognitive needs, and actually in a way meets social emotional needs as well. So that's the beauty of workshop from my perspective.
I think something that Dale just said is, for middle school students and elementary school students, we're teaching readers and not books. And that really allows for a lot of differentiation opportunities, because when you're getting to know each individual reader, there's always room for growth. I think that when you think about all the metacognition categories that we can use with students in middle school, when we start to get to analytical, evaluative, and critiquing categories, that's the kind of conversations that we'll have with students. That's the kind of writing about reading that we would want them to do. But also, we're going to inspire students to look at different kinds of texts at the level that either meets their engagement needs or challenges them in a way where thematically the books might go a little bit deeper. The questions might be a little more rigorous, but I do think we keep going back to the workshop model. It really does afford teachers opportunities to not just teach one way, but to teach in a lot of different ways that respond to the needs of students.
There's never a ceiling. There's never a ceiling in literacy. for kids. And if somebody feels they've reached their ceiling, that's a conversation that needs to be had between the child and the teacher and support staff and the parents, because truly there is no ceiling.
I think that's what that workshop teaching is hard. That's one thing we haven't said tonight, but I'll say it now. It's going to be a wonderful learning experience, but everything that we're saying is basically communicating, we're individualizing and personalizing all of our instruction to the needs of individual readers, writers, and thinkers.
And I'm so glad you brought that, Pat, up. This is really hard work. It's not only hard work for the teachers because it's shifting a paradigm, but it's very hard work for the kids. It's exhausting. The teachers are there to support them, but we are pushing these kids. Our kids deserve to be pushed. All children deserve to be pushed. And we have a goal for all kids, and that's for them to meet standards by the time they complete a grade level. And meet, of course, means exceed standards for some of these kids as well. And that means going more deeply into the various standards.
So understanding those pieces and with the workshop model and all of the benefits that go with that, does that mean that there's not room to incorporate any whole class teaching if a teacher thought that a particular novel does challenge the class and is a way to push those boundaries to cause the kids to reach further? Is that not then allowed under this curriculum?
First of all, I just want to clarify. I'm so sorry, Pat.
No, that's okay.
It's so hard when we're on the screen.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, Readers and Writers Workshop is not a curriculum.
No.
Readers and Writers Workshop is an approach to teaching readers and writers. Resources are what you use to teach them. Creating the curriculum helps keep things in an organized manner that makes sense developmentally and make sure that all kids are getting what they need when they need it. I'm so sorry, Pat.
No, that's okay.
You want to talk about the whole group novel?
Yeah, so there's many different schools of thought, but most contemporary research will say that you can use the whole class novel to establish protocols and routines and build that sense of community. But then after that, we typically move into what's called book clubs. And so what book clubs afford students, first of all, if you do something called like a book tasting, is students get to take a little gallery walk and preview books so that they can make sure that there's a level of engagement. Because, you know, when someone else chooses a book for you and you don't like that book, there's a good chance you're not going to pay attention to it. And statistically, for a teacher to pick out a book that 25 students will like and would be appropriate for their reading level, that generally doesn't happen. And so the rationale from first using the whole class experience to build protocols and experiences like writing about reading, lifting the level of talk, how students create reading plans, how they become responsible to one another, and then they shift into book clubs, is because that is the method for differentiation. I'm not like a black and white person where I say things like it's allowed and not allowed. I think there's room for both, but there's also a very strong rationale for both.
Christy, did you have a follow-up question that I missed?
Still trying to understand. So I hear what you're saying, that there's room for both. So are we offering, there's the ability to use both of these models while certainly encouraging this? Because I heard you say earlier that there's 3 to 5 or so vetted resources within each box, you know, in that. So I get concerned when I hear that is that the only spot that we're allowing them to choose from, or do those resources
Okay, that's a great question, Christy. So I want to kind of define resources here. So when we talk about resources, we're talking about the resources that create the framework for either teaching a fiction unit or a nonfiction unit. So what are the skills, habits, and attitudes we want kids to learn, et cetera? That's the main tool for the teacher. Pat, you'll clean this up okay. The resources, the wealth of resources that children will have choices of. We have ordered sets and sets of books that teachers have actually culled together, and we're still in the process of doing this. We've only done it for the first 2 units. So the kids will have multiple choices based on interest, based on aptitude, based on the happenings of what's going on in the world today, making sure that they represent all of the children in our classrooms. So we are not talking about a resource like buying, we were talking, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, where they bought a text in K through 5 in Spanish and English that was their, they called it their reading curriculum. It was really a resource. The curriculum hadn't been developed yet. So did I just make any sense?
No, so to go back, yes, you did make sense.
Thank you.
Christy, your question, the teachers have access to text sets, so multiple copies of books. We're not taking that option away from teachers at all. The only thing that we ask is that whatever text set they use aligns to the standards or the genre that's being introduced. And the practice should be differentiated and responsive. And a whole class novel is an older practice. It would be very difficult to find a contemporary researcher to say that it actually is one that works all the time, because it doesn't. We have children that are disengaged because they can't read the text, or we have children that are disengaged because they didn't like the topic. So again, we're not saying, yes, you can do this, no, you can't do that, but you always have to bring it back to the students and the purpose. And if the purpose is to inspire children to think or to connect it to a theme or something that's relevant, that's happening in our society, that's wonderful. But we also have to be mindful of ensuring that all students have access to appropriate texts, that they feel comfortable and confident. If that's the case, if it's a homogeneous setting, then we could probably move forward with that. But the rationale for book clubs, and I will always advocate for this, is because we are thinking about engagement, level, appropriateness, standards, and alignment.
And I think you just brought up something very important. There really are no homogeneous classes.
Right.
Because even in a class that is an honors class or a gifted class, kids are all over the place with their reading and writing journey. And I think that's what we really need to remember, that every child, no matter if your classes are leveled and not leveled, all those kids do not make for a homogeneous class. They may have some commonalities, but not all when it goes to creating readers and writers.
I'd like to ask the question that may be more pertinent or relevant to Kevin or Mark. So they've done all this work, brought all these people together, and then they're building these curriculum maps, scope and sequence, and all these wonderful documents. Who's the ultimate decision maker when that says, like, for this year, they're new, this is what we're going with? And then in subsequent years, as they're revised, tweaked, and reviewed, which I would assume they, who owns that decision? Is it a team of people like Mark and Dr. Cacciatore and yourself? You know, tell me all this work is done, all the inputs gathered, and like here, we have a recommendation and there's a sample for 5th grade. Who then is saying, this is what we're going to, or no, we need to tweak it, or yes, maybe we need the exception for a whole class book, or whatever the variant might be, or the improvement or the tweak might be.
So that would be led by Dr. Ketchtory. Her and her team would work with the coordinators that we have. And it would be very similar, reaching back out, working with our principals at the building or the assistant principals that are working with our staff and working with our staff. Because this should be a continual evaluation process to find out how things are working. With the books that are being provided, what's being implemented in the classroom. So it should be filtered through her office. And if there's additional resources that we feel would need to be added or modified, we can do it that way.
Yeah, and just to kind of put what Kevin just described into action from this past spring, Erica Deming met with the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers, and the unit framework or scope and sequence that was created was based on conversation with the staff. So like for the 7th grade, you'll still see the Revolutionary War unit in there. It's using different resources, but it's still the team's unit. The 8th grade staff still are talking about their identity unit that they start the year with. They've added the World Strides launch resource to it because that resource is one of the K-8 resources that is going to provide the continuity for the kids as they move up through the grade levels in the readers and writers workshop strategies. So, and being and identifying themselves and pushing themselves to see themselves as a reader and writer. So that collaborative piece is going on now. But yeah, to as Kevin and Lisa, as you stated, is we have to get it framed out. So there has been a lot of, this is what we're going to do, because we had to make some decisions. You know, and that's change, and it's hard. I mean, this is not easy work that the K-5 staff are going through, or the 6-8 ELA social studies staff, because it's a methodology change for them, and it's also you know, it's also looking at the work and taking what they've done and trying to bring in the aligned resources to the standards that we know will benefit the kids. So.
And I just wanted to add one more thing. You know, when I entered the district, I mean, the reading scores of the kids across the board did not follow a regular bell curve. You had many children who were not reading at grade level. You had many kids who couldn't decode words. And we have to look at this in terms of, is there student growth? That's what's important. Look, I was an English language arts and social studies teacher many years ago for many years. And I had my pet projects and my books that I love to teach. And after a few years, I realized, hey, this isn't about me. This is about the kids and what they need. And our responsibilities as professionals is to look at where they are and move them forward, and to create readers, writers, and critical thinkers who can go out in the world and be able to be educated citizens. Any other questions?
Okay, Pat and Dale, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Sure.
We're going to move to something.
Return to in-person learning. Principal team?
Good evening, I'm Stephanie Drake, principal at Washington. I'm really excited to be here in person. I think this is my first board meeting back in person. And we, as a team, an administrative team, are super excited to be talking about bringing kids back to school next fall. Next slide, please. So beginning with the 21-22 school year, all students must resume in person for learning, provided that remote instruction can be made available for students who are not eligible for the COVID vaccine and are under a quarantine order by the local Department of Health. Next slide, please. ISB requires schools to continue the education of students who are not eligible for the vaccine and are required to quarantine due to close contact with someone who tested positive for COVID. That quarantine period could range from 10 to 24 days. Next slide, please. Tanya Fergus will be up to talk about the next piece.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Tanya Fergus. I am the principal at Mechanics Grove School. Oh, I love that. That's okay. Is that all right, Conrad?
Yeah.
Good, okay. So just like this past fall, when we determined that we were going to be going full-time remote, the ISBE made a requirement that we were to provide 5 hours of an instructional day. So this will be the same regulations for any students who do need to quarantine and who are home. And I know at the top it says home hospital for quarantine. It's a term which Mark's going to explain as we get up to the next slide in a couple moments. But they are requiring that there's still 5 hours of instruction for a child who needs to quarantine or be home. And they're recommending that 2 out of those 5 hours are considered to be synchronous instruction. So that means real-time instruction. It will be done via Zoom, obviously, because the child will be home quarantining, but 2 hours will be delivered live instruction, where the rest, or even more could be live, but the rest then would be asynchronous work. So something else that they're having assigned by the teacher. It needs to be delivered by a certified teacher or a certified substitute. If it is a substitute delivering the instruction during that synchronous time, the substitute still needs to be overseen by the certified teacher. Just like a substitute in the classroom, when a teacher is out, they leave guest teacher or substitute plans. That's overseen and directed by the classroom certified teacher. Next slide, please. So just for a little understanding, this is where our plan is at the time, at the moment. If a child needs to go on quarantine, we would like to assign that child with 3 different adults to help with the process. The first one would be a case manager, and the case manager's responsibility would be to coordinate all of the personnel. This could be a certified staff member if needed. If our numbers get high, it could be anyone from an assistant principal to an office staff to help out with that coordination piece. The other one is the classroom teacher. So whatever classroom that child is coming from, or homeroom teacher at the middle school might look a little bit different, of course. The classroom teacher's responsibility is still going to be to plan those daily lessons so that as soon as the child can return to class, there's not a learning gap. There's actually a very smooth transition back into class. And then the last one is what we are calling our homebound tutor. So this is the one that could be a certified staff member or a substitute overseen by a certified staff member. Before the school year starts, as principals, we plan to reach out to our staff to get a list ahead of time of anyone who might be interested in doing this, should the need arise, so that we're not kind of like pulling from, mid-air as soon as it happens. And the homebound tutor is basically going to be the one that's responsible for carrying out the instruction. And not only just from the classroom teacher, but if that child receives any sort of special services or enrichment, we would make sure that that continues as well. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Pilot, and next slide, please.
Thank you. My name is Mark Pilot. I'm the principal at Carl Sandburg Middle School. Just to clarify, for those of you, if you're at home watching this, I don't know how big this is on your screen, but when Mrs. Fergus was talking about the 5 hours and last fall when we started, it was 5 hours of instruction that we had to provide remote per day. ISBE has shifted it, if you saw in the slides,
yes.
just to point it out that it's 5 hours per week.
Thank you.
So what we're setting up our tutors to do is at least 2 Zoom in-person instructions. It'll probably be daily, but that'll be dependent on the situation, how many kids we have, and all of that. So it's 5 hour per week piece, so about an hour a day, with then the other work being provided asynchronously. And as Mrs. Fergus ended, we are making sure and working in coordination with Jamie DiCarlo and the special service coordinators at the building, that if a child does need to be quarantined, does not have the vaccine, we would, and they have an IEP or 504, that those services will continue. They'll probably be delivered virtually. Much like they were this year. Our special services team learned a ton about doing social work on Zoom and all of the speech on Zoom and all of the different pieces. So we feel that we're well equipped to provide that continuing service through the Zoom program. So we do want to make sure that this is all encompassing of all of our students. The next slide talks about the full home hospital care. So basically the quarantine is for students, and those 5 hours per week are for students who are there for 10 to 24 days. If we run into a situation where a child cannot come back to school, we are extending, our thought is to provide that full-time instruction for the child. And it would be done virtually. At the middle school, we would partner with the Illinois Virtual School. We've actually used their summer bridge program in the past through summer school, so we're familiar with them. That also mirrors what Mundelein High School is doing. So from a 6-12 perspective, we're connected. At the elementary school, we would align the plan to the homebound tutoring, but make it more extensive, depending on how much service that child needed and what services needed to be provided. So this isn't an extreme case if the child can't come back to school at all. And it's not necessarily required by ISBE rules, but our goal would be to provide it by semester, and so we can get the child back into school as soon as possible. So with that, that's our plan to handle the quarantines next year, and hopefully bring everybody back in person and keep them safe and keep the kids in school and in activities. Any questions?
If a child needed to be, because I understand, ISB has said it has to be ineligible for vaccine, which would be under 12 at this
Right.
point in time, and in a quarantine. My understanding is even for those who have been vaccinated wouldn't need to quarantine.
Correct.
Under the
They can
current,
come back to
under the
school.
current
Yep.
rules, and whatever that's existing.
Yep.
And so if there is a child who is, say, over 12, who is eligible to be vaccinated, but their family, for whatever reason, has chosen not to, where do they fall in this?
So if a child over 12 who doesn't want to vaccinate, they still need to come to school. That's kind of the guidance that we're following from legal and everybody else. That's how we've interpreted the ISBE
Okay.
statement, is that so they still need to come to school. They would come to school unvaccinated, just like one of our 6th graders or 3rd graders would. And then if they came into close contact, we would quarantine them. And if it went, we're probably going to kick in that case manager, because what we've experienced this past spring, as we quarantined, because they maybe demonstrated a symptom or something happened outside of school and they needed to be tested, and we partnered with Pediatrust to provide those testings quickly. It's been like, if they quarantine on a Tuesday, they would typically be back in school by Thursday or Friday, because they could go get the test. We could provide some work, so that it's just like they're out for a day or two, because, like a traditional school year. So we'll probably kick in the homebound tutoring after 3 days. But they would be, to your question, they would be required to come to school, an unvaccinated student.
Okay, and are we waiting for more instructions from those above us about whether masks are being used or not? Because I didn't
Yes.
hear anything about that. so
Yeah,
I'm just
there's
curious.
masks right now. We are still under, until Governor Pritzker releases, probably from his executive order, we're still under the mask mandate, and we're still under the 3 feet social distancing, 6 feet in the cafeteria, only 50 kids on a bus. So there's still some things the state has to figure out
Hopefully,
for us to open up in person. Although, we did I think there's at least at the end of the year, speaking for myself, I can't speak for anybody else, but I think we had a lot of positive pieces going for us. So I'm hoping that momentum carries us into the fall. And even if, you know, parents are uncomfortable putting their child on a bus, they're gonna drive home or let them ride their bike when it's nice or whatever. So we'll see that number go past probably that 72%, 75% that we had.
Right.
So.
So for, now that the younger kids have all turned in their devices and
Yeah.
we're not issuing those
Yeah.
unless maybe, so that would be part of the coordination effort to get them a device, because I know the older kids will
Yes.
have them anyway, but
Yes.
the younger ones still won't, so.
Yeah,
okay.
if they needed to be quarantined, part of their homebound package, like, so homebound tutoring is nothing new to District 75. We've done it for a variety of purposes, for a variety of students at every grade level, usually for a pretty severe medical condition. And what the typical process is the teacher gathers up the materials needed. The parent, we contact the parent, they come and get them, and then we work with the teacher, kind of that case management piece. We work with the homebound tutor, the classroom teacher, to make sure the alignment of instruction is there for the child. We would just include the Chromebook or the appropriate device in that package pickup.
And Christy, that plan is already in place for
Yeah.
Washington. That isn't one-to-one yet.
Yeah,
Dan Crow and I have already had that conversation. So
Yeah.
we're
Just
prepared.
curious. Hopefully
Yeah.
we'll never need it.
right,
Yeah.
That's- yes,
It's cool,
yes.
but yeah,
yes.
thank you.
So you're welcome. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next on the board report, first one is the intergovernmental agreement with the ROE for the reading resource position being shared. There was a note in there that one of the dates was inaccurate, so that has been updated and the one that will be signed tonight. It is for the duration of the 21-22 school year. It had referenced 21-20, so we missed a 2. So we would still keep retained 60% of position. That is 10% more than what we had the previous year, which was split 50-50.
But that's because we are actually using her 60%, so that's why we would pay for 60%.
Yes.
Correct.
Correct. Yes. Plenty to do. Okay, and if you bring up the academic topics, please. So this is one thing that we've been talking about. We did have academic topics for this last half of this year, finishing up in July. This list that is being provided is a running document. So I use this document to develop what are some topics that will be coming forward to you before the board based on last year's history and topics I've heard you say we want to have come back. Now, the dates for the months can change. We could have other emergency topics that need to come before this, but I figured at least, and when you want to look at a glance, what are we going to be discussing? Here's what we're doing. To me, the most important part of this list for you is July, December, and June. So July, this coming month, we are setting our benchmarks for what we want to be able to do academically. Come December, we're going to be coming back to you with a mid-year update. Here's how we're doing on those established benchmarks. And then next year, this time, 1 year from now, we're going to be going over, here's how we did. And be able to see where we need to improve and celebrate where we were successful. Those are the ones I'd ask that we do not move. But the other stuff we certainly can. So as we talk, I'll keep updating this for you throughout the year.
Actually, I just had 2 questions, you know.
Sure.
I didn't want this, I don't think you want this to become as extensive as a typical agenda. It's just highlight the heavy topics.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so is the policy committee, like, we'll start talking about when we want to meet together, and in the policies, there's often various requirements on reporting and such like that. Do you want us to kind of sync up those requirements with this, or, because some of them are, or I could tell are already covered, so do you want us to do that and add that detail, or?
So if I'm understanding you, there are some mandated reports we need to do through policy, and when you review them, those come to light. I'd like to think we have most of them. So what I would ask is the policy committee is going through that. If you read in somewhere that we're to report on X, let's make sure it's on there.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And because
That's
like,
a
I
good
think
double,
one that came out when we were looking at the grant document was like a reference to the discipline committee. And I went, oh yeah, we haven't heard about that, so we should probably, okay.
Yep.
And then the other thing I noticed was we had an earlier version and I think there was some shifting of the topic. So like July of this year was gonna be equity, but that's no longer on that.
because we went to the goals. So we didn't know where they were gonna be for having it developed. And I thought we
Okay.
would wait till we had a better idea when we
Yeah.
were gonna get our committee started,
Okay.
and then let's establish what month we'd want to bring that back for the goal.
Yeah, and so then you're suggesting January, so, because I know you had other things you were doing, and then there's our committee, so I wasn't sure like what that meant.
So I put it on there, so I knew we had it. It certainly can go up to September or August. That's where I think we need to figure out where we're at timing wise. I didn't want to make an assumption.
Okay, cool.
Questions? Okay. Last topic then in my area is the opportunity for the board to discuss if you've considered you'd want to have some resolutions composed on behalf of District 75 that we would ask for the Illinois School Board Association to consider when the delegates meet in November at the III Conference. I didn't have any feedback. I mean, we typically have not. Just want to make sure, because if we did, we'd need to have that resolution written and submitted by the 23rd.
No one has any pet projects they want to have us all speak to the whole state on? Okay.
Okay.
Being the delegate, just. I don't know.
Very good. Then. Hearing none. That's it for the administrative report, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. If any board members like an item removed or tabled for further discussion, now is the time to communicate that request. I have something I would like to, because Mr. Wood and Ms. Unger are here, I would like to sort of pick apart the personnel report and ask that we discuss later the personnel report, just the certified staff employment section. There are 7 people under the certified staff employment section. In the consent agenda, we would approve the rest of the employment report, personnel report, sorry. Is everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have anything they want to pick out or touch on? Okay, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented tonight, except for the personnel report, certified staff employment section. Second, Mr. Billatier. Will Secretary please call the roll?
Holly.
Aye.
Delisier.
Aye.
Fingerhut. Aye. Gallegos.
Aye.
Hitzke.
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Next up is our board action items. I move the Board of Education accepts the superintendent's recommendation to approve the donation to the Mundelein Elementary School District 75 from Medline in the amount of $20,000.
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Holly.
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
Hitzke.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Delisier.
Aye.
Fingerhut. Aye.
Thank you. It's exciting. I move that the Board of Education accept the superintendent's recommendation to accept the bid from Hartwick Plumbing and Heating in the amount of $451,900. Second. Second, Mr. Gallegos. Secretary, please call the roll.
Holly.
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Fingerhut. Aye. Delisier.
Aye.
Hitzke.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
I move the Board of Education accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the consolidated district plan for the fiscal year 2021, 2022 as presented. Second by Mr. Hitzke. Secretary, please call the roll.
Holly.
Aye.
Hitzke.
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
Delisier.
Aye.
Fingerhut. Aye. Rose.
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Would the Board of Education accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the shared services transportation agreement with Fremont District 79 in the amount of $139,278 for school year 21-22?
Second,
Secretary, please call the roll.
Polly,
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye, Gallegos,
Aye.
Pelletier,
Aye.
St. Clair,
Aye.
Pinsky.
Aye.
Rhodes.
Aye.
Would the Board of Education accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the Director of Public Relations, Shared Services, and the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning job descriptions?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rose. Secretary, please call the roll.
Polly,
Aye.
Rose,
Aye.
Pinsky.
Aye.
St. Clair,
Aye.
Gallegos,
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye, Pelletier,
I move that the Board of Education accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the fiscal year 2021-2022 intergovernmental agreement with Lake County Regional Office of Education, NIRRC, for the shared use of a resource teacher.
Second,
Secretary, please call the roll.
Polly.
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye, Gallegos.
Aye.
Pelletier.
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
Pinsky.
Aye.
Rhodes.
Aye.
Okay. It's time for executive session. The Board of Education meeting will now recess and enter the executive session at 8:51 PM. We'll just, that's my motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sinclair. Secretary, please call the roll.
Polly.
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
Rhodes.
Aye.
Pinsky.
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye, Pelletier.
Aye.
One thing I do want to say, Ms. Unger, congratulations. Welcome to going to be a coordinator. Wood, welcome to the team. Thank you, Mr. Five. Looking forward to having you today here for our family.
Thank you. Okay, the Board of Education will now reconvene at 9:08 PM. Secretary, please call the roll.
Polly.
Aye, or here?
Rhodes.
Here.
St. Clair. Here. Pinsky.
Here.
Gallegos.
Here.
Fingerhut, here. Pelletier.
Here.
Okay, I move the Board of Education accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the executive session minutes for April 20th, May 11th, and May 18th, all of 2021.
Second,
Secretary, please call the roll.
Polly.
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Gallegos.
Aye.
Pinsky.
Aye.
Pelletier.
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
Rhodes.
Aye.
I move the Board of Education accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve a multi-year contract and a one-time administrator performer award bonus of $1,500 for Dave Zaremba, Director of Facilities and Maintenance.
Second,
Secretary, please call the roll.
Polly.
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Gallegos.
Aye.
Pinsky.
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
Rhodes.
Aye.
And Pelletier.
I move that we approve the personnel report, the certified staff section. Second, Mr. Hitzke. Secretary, please call the roll.
Polly.
Aye.
Pinsky.
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Pelletier.
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Rhodes.
Aye.
Okay, it is President's prerogative time. I was thinking, Eric, did you want to talk about, did you go to CEDAW? Do you want to talk about CEDAW?
Yeah, I did go.
Great, okay.
It was a great meeting. It was their first in-person meeting since the pandemic started, so it's very exciting to be there. It was pretty short, that was only about 45 minutes. There was just a lot of new appointments. The main focus of the meeting was the budget presentation for fiscal year 2022. They cited an expected 3% increase in tuition for districts, and said that was due to a continued decrease in enrollment. IDA grants are no longer being given to CEDAW since it's cooperative, so they cited that as one of the reasons that tuition is also continuing to increase. They also mentioned that staffing will continue to pattern that has gone on for the past few years there, and they expect it to continue.
Can I just do a question? And because I mean, we've heard CEDAW a lot. Are they like are they a non-for-profit or are they part of the state education system? What exactly are they? I guess I'm just curious because I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know, what are they? I know we can contract with them, but how and why do they exist? And what,
I know they're a co-op.
oh, okay, so they're an independent co-op. They're
Yes.
not like a state of Illinois Department of Education.
Yeah, it stands for Special Education District of Lake County.
Oh,
It's all
okay,
Lake
okay.
County schools,
Okay,
you know,
So-
participate in, well, I
Okay,
shouldn't say
okay.
all Lake County schools.
Yeah.
All
But a
Lake County schools
co-op
are
would-
eligible to participate. Some schools have,
They-
especially in the recent years, have pulled out of CEDAL.
Yeah, that was another, one of the reasons for the continued decrease in enrollment is that increase in take backs are.
yeah, and we've heard that and we've,
Yeah.
no, but it occurred to me, I didn't know exactly why
Yeah.
they exist.
Yeah, some schools have opted to bring it back in-house.
And
Or
for the,
ours.
yeah, I was gonna say for the newer members, we, over the last few years, especially with the leadership of Jamie and then, the woman before who had a special ed, Holly, we brought back lots, well, I shouldn't say lots, because the numbers are small, but we brought back quite a few programs back to the district. Because I think the special ed people really think that it's really important for the kids that live in Mundelein to go to school in Mundelein because they're around their friends and peers and everything. So I think that's worked out really well. Does the high school still have people in CEDAL or is they?
There are some, yes, but it was very much the same, trying to pull back smaller numbers. They did bring back the transition program, which Eric's very familiar with.
Yeah, I'm a teacher.
Very successful.
It seems to be just, this is just my point of view, but it seems to me that most school districts are using it for like the more difficult, not more difficult, but more, not more advanced, but yeah, more challenging, you know, and try to bring back the kids that we can back to the district, so. So I think they meet quarterly, so Eric will.
Yeah, the next meeting is not until August, at which point they're gonna have a public hearing on the tentative budget that was presented at the last meeting.
I don't think anybody else has met committee wise. Does anyone?
I have,
Oh,
the
okay.
STEAM Foundation,
Oh, yeah.
we met 2 months ago and then they skipped this month because they decided to take a break for the summer. Just did a couple of votes by email. So I heard about the STEAM Foundation, the Media Center donation, and like Nikki had said, she is working on and has a lot of really good leads for and anticipating getting the balance or as close as possible of the funding that'll be needed for that media center from other sources. So if we don't have that updated as I can bring that back to everybody, but
Have
there's
you
a lot of,
become a voting member or member?
yeah, apparently. So yes, because they had that as part of their bylaws that
Yeah.
a sitting member of the Board of Education is there, so I'm there, so.
For next, do they have a fundraiser for the fall? They think they're gonna do? Or-
Not yet, they have some plans, but in the one meeting I attended, because like I said, yesterday's meeting or last Thursday's meeting didn't happen because they took a break for the summer, so we won't meet again until August or September. I've got to look at my calendar, but
Oh, okay, but they're like.
yeah, I mean, I think they're planning on, assuming everything is back to normal as best they can. I think they would like to do the pizza throwdown again. They would like to do some of those things. So they have plans to continue with that.
Ray and I have our finance meeting next Tuesday, so.
Oh, great.
That's our first one with.
Are you gonna talk about the 5-year thing coming up?
I believe that's not, we just got the agenda today, so I haven't looked at it, but.
Okay. Yeah. Because the calendar that Kevin did, or I think that's on there.
It is on there for.
A month or two away, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, September. So you'll talk about it eventually, great. Anything else anyone needs to report? Okay, I will send out the exit slip again, like I did last time. I'll try to send it out tomorrow morning instead of a couple days later, because I totally just spaced it. And then the other thing I want to say is that when I can, I try not to miss meetings. And I'm not going to actually miss the meeting. I just won't be here for next month's meeting. We're going to go visit my wife's family in Pennsylvania that we haven't seen since Christmas of 2019. So the only time we can fit it in between all my kids' stuff is the week of the meeting. So, but I will be here for the pre-meeting. But I just won't be here. So I thought maybe since you'll be here physically, if you want to run the meeting, that just makes more sense to me.
Oh, but you're gonna dial in?
But yeah, I'll be
okay.
I'll be on the Zoom.
Yeah,
So,
no, that seems.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, because we'll be there. And we'll be fine. So if you take care of that then. It'll just be easier, I think, instead of trying to do
I
it.
think it worked
Yeah.
better that one time where you ran it virtually, there was.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to hear, but anyway, so just so you know that I won't be physically here. And then, yeah, just so you know, I feel like Lisa and I have mentioned this, but, usually on the Thursday or the Friday before the board meeting, we have a meeting with Kevin to talk over the agenda. And he just gives us a heads up when things are coming up. So if there's anything that you want to, something comes up, you want to put on the agenda, let Lisa and I know before that meeting. We've been meeting typically on Friday mornings. So if you want to let us know if there's something that, that you're hearing or something that comes up, please let us know and we'll try to put it on the agenda or know that for sure that we'll want to talk about it during President's Prerogative time. Okay? All right. Anything else for the good of the cause? Okay, well, enjoy the beautiful day it's going to be tomorrow, just like today. I'm so excited. And it's going to get hot again. So, all right, I move that we adjourn. 9:17. Do I have a second? Second. Secretary, please call the roll.
Kelly.
Yes. Aye.
Gallego.
Aye.
Kinsky.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
St. Clair. Aye. Fingerhead. Aye. Aye. Pelletier.
Aye. Great, thank you, everyone.